Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Council. We will start with our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight for our invocation, we have Pastor Tim Journey from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Thank you. Yeah, right there would be great.
Father God, I come to you in the name of Jesus, and I ask that you be with this great city. Continue to bless it. Be with the mayor. Be with the rest of the city council, Father. Be with the city employees that are represented here tonight. I pray for the first responders, the police, the fire department, and the medical assistants as they keep this city safe. Tonight, as the council meets, as they hear what's on the agenda and as they go over it, Father, that you'll give them mercy and grace and wisdom and understanding in everyone's needs. And I want to thank you again for your son, Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. All right. We do have one public announcement. We have our communications manager, Lisa LaPlante.
Good evening, Council. The good news is I'll only do this once every 10 years. I'd like to introduce you all to Arlene Alvarez. She is a partnership specialist with the Census Bureau. Come on over here. So as you know, census is done every 10 years. And Mayor, you signed a proclamation to recognize the U.S. Census. Census starts next month.
Well, we've already started hiring, and the census itself will be next year, next spring. So we're about 1 year out. So this is the symbolic gesture.
And she left with us some information in case anyone is interested in applying to be a census taker. So if anyone out there is interested in a position doing that. But the proclamation is right here, and it discusses all of the things that are involved in the U.S. Census, and we appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. And will you leave information with the city clerk for people that want to sign up to do that? That would be great.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
All right. Next, we have our approval of the regular agenda. Madam City Clerk. Oh, yeah. I neglected public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item? All right, and then we'll move to approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff is requesting that we remove item number 8E and F and move item number 6 to precede item number 4, please.
Okay. Mr. City Manager?
No further changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No further changes.
And come to council for approval.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. I'd like to recognize Mr. Harhay. Councilmember Harhay is on the telephone there. And I apologize for not to enter. Can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes, good evening from Washington, D.C.
All right, we can hear you too. I hope you're doing well there. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Okay, next is our approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk.
No changes.
Mr. City Manager.
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney.
No changes.
And Council.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion also carries unanimously. I know we have one fourth grader out there. And can we get you to stand up so we can recognize you? Yeah. Thank you. You can say a few words if you want to. Your smile says it all. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for coming. Pretty smile. All right. So we are on then to item number 6 we're taking first, which is matters pertaining to the Community Development Block Grant. We have our Community Development Director, Mr. Michael Mays, to introduce that.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Each year, 15% of what the city receives from Clark County for Community Development Block Grant funds can be utilized for public service fund requests. And for several years now, those funds have been going to emergency aid and lend a hand. And before you tonight is a public hearing for the consideration of their 2 applications and the dollar amount request. Emergency aid is asking for $25,521. Lend a hand is asking for $8,967. Claudia Bridges is here from Emergency Aid to answer any questions you may have, and Letty Zimmerman is here from Lend a Hand.
All right, thank you. Claudia, would you like to say a few words?
I'm Claudia Bridges. I'm the Treasurer and Grant Coordinator for Emergency Aid of Boulder City. We've been receiving this grant for 32 years. And we really appreciate the relationship we have with the city, through the county, through all the way up to HUD for this money. It helps us deliver on our mission about helping people avoid homelessness. That's pretty much who are facing an emergency situation. This grant is wonderful. It helps us pay rent and utilities for those people. And we find that most of those people, well, they have to be able to go forward. That's part of the agreement. And so, do you have any questions?
Council, do you have questions or comments? We don't. Well,
Actually, I do have. I would just like to say, the work that Emergency Aid does is vital to our community. And I know that the staff over there, I believe you have 1 paid staff member.
Half time.
And everyone else is a volunteer.
Yes.
This organization grew out of Boulder City Welfare Services that I believe started back during the construction of the dam. So.
Yeah, it started in 1932 and incorporated in 1966.
Again, thank you for the services you provide.
Thank you very much.
anybody else?
Anybody else?
I just want to echo what Councilman McManus said. Boulder City Emergency Aid is an integral part of our community and has provided these exemplary services for years, as you mentioned, and the fact that you have so many dedicated volunteers is remarkable. And the other thing is that the community is really engaged in keeping the pantry stocked. So
absolutely.
It's just a great community organization. So congratulations and thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, one other thing.
Go ahead.
I forgot to mention one thing. I believe the clients that you provide services for, the last figure I heard was that over 90% of them have been Boulder City residents, and there are residency requirements for some of the services you provide.
The pantry requirements are residency for 30 days. And for help with rent, utilities, it's 6 months. And they have to have proof. There has to be a signed lease. There has to be a driver's license, something to prove that they've lived in Boulder City for 6 months.
So again, these services are directed primarily to Boulder City residents.
Absolutely, absolutely. Specifically, and I would say more than 90% in terms of rent and utilities assistance, and that's what the grant goes for. I would say, well, it has to be almost 100% are residents of Boulder City.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Letty, would you like to come up for Lend a Hand?
Letty Zimmerman, I'm on the board of Lend a Hand, and I want to first of all thank you for the past support you've given us. I guess we're the newcomers, only 28 years of being involved with this program. The other, the grant that we get from the CBDG is applied to our transportation coordinator position. Now, our main services, for some of you who don't know, transportation is the major thing we do to medical appointments both in Las Vegas and the whole Las Vegas Valley and in Boulder City. We also do home services for people who are homebound and need assistance. We will go into the home and do respite for a caregiver who just has to get out and have some time to do their own thing. We will do that as well. But the majority of our work is transportation. On an annual basis, we have about 300 clients. Not all of them require a lot or maybe even any service in a given time period. But when you have dialysis patients or other patients that have to go into the VA hospital, it's quite a commitment for our volunteers. We have about 80 volunteers who work throughout the year. Right now, we're short. Our demand for services is peaking, and so I want to put a plug in for anyone who wants to really a rewarding thing to do to volunteer for driving or in-home services. I talked with the volunteer coordinator just yesterday, and she had 18 requests for service from clients that she was still trying to match for next week's service with volunteers. And on a personal note with that, I was able, last week I was privileged to do drive a person into an appointment, and it's a person who had been very independent and had a sudden medical event that just changed her life. It's been a short period, but she's recovering, but still a lot of medical appointments. And she told me that Lend a Hand had saved her life. And you know, when you're driving somebody and it's taken you, a couple of hours, it makes you feel like, is there anything else I could have done that would have better use of my time? And so we appreciate the support, the financial support, and I'm always wanting to encourage people to come forward and volunteer because the rewards are great for the clients, but also very great for the volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Mr. McManus.
Again, I would just like to thank all the volunteers that do work with Lend a Hand. And as I recall, I believe last year it was mentioned that many of the drivers donate their mileage back to the organization to use for other purposes. So again, provides a great service here in town. Thank you.
Councilwoman Leavitt.
Mr. Mayor, Lend a Hand is another stellar organization in Boulder City. I was privileged to be on the board for a while, so I really got kind of a closer look at what was going on, and they do have amazing volunteers, and Letty answered my question with respect to caseload, so it seems like that's going up, the number of people that you serve. But one of the things that I was struck with when I was on the board is how effectively and efficiently it is run. It's just another great organization, and I remember when it was formed. I was trying to think of the founder, Pat Duncan, was it? So that won't tell you how old I am, but I've been around for a while.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just want to mention that Lend a Hand has touched our family's life. And in full disclosure, our handicapped son, Matthew, is a client of Lend a Hand. And they've been immense help in a number of different ways in our family. And a salute to them from the Harhe family.
Thank you. Any others? So this is a public hearing item. Anybody in the public wishing to speak on this? All right, we'll see, and then we'll close the public hearing. I just also want to add that both wonderful organizations, as I've talked to the volunteers as well as those that kind of spearhead these efforts over the years, including recently at the Rock Roll and Stroll, it's always apparent that you can never get enough volunteers. All the volunteers seem to be doing double duty all the time, and so make a plea to the public out there that even though these organizations are well run by those that are running them, they can use your help, and as well as financial assistance. But in particular, that volunteerism really touches lives. And as was said by Letty, I mean, these people that receive these services view it as saving their lives. It really does, whether it's pantry, whether it's transportation, whether it's the home visits or otherwise. And both stellar organizations that are great ambassador organizations for Boulder City, and we really appreciate it. So with that, I'll go ahead and move for approval of this item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you for coming tonight for that. And next, I believe, is item number 4. We have a presentation regarding our utilities from our utilities director, Mr. Dennis Porter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I promised the city clerk that I would keep this to less than 90 minutes, so I'll try to do that. It's day 70 since I started shortly after Thanksgiving, and what I've prepared for you is just kind of a briefing, high-level briefing on what I've observed and some of the things I've seen, and some of the issues I think we're going to need to challenges or even opportunities, if you want to look at it that way, that are something we're going to have to deal with in the future. So with that, I'll start with a quick overview. Went too far. Essentially, the utilities themselves are all created by charter. As Councilman McManus said yesterday, they're not really defined by each function right now in the charter, but they are defined and they're treated as separate enterprise fund with regards to the water, the wastewater, the electric, and the landfill. They are not for profit, which is really how we distinguish ourselves from the likes of independently owned utilities like Nevada Energy. We'll start with the water. On the water side, we're regulated by EPA. The Safe Drinking Water Act was completed in 1974. Nevada Department of Environmental Protection has primacy. They're basically our regulation, our body that regulates us and makes sure we're doing what we have to do to meet the criteria within the Safe Drinking Water Act. The utility itself has about 5,400 residential accounts and about 580 commercial accounts. I think everybody knows, but just in case folks don't, we're a purveyor member of the Southern Nevada Water Authority. The Southern Nevada Water Authority is relatively new, speaking, if you will. They were created in 1991. You can see the list of members there, which includes, of course, Boulder City. The Water Authority provides Boulder City with both wholesale raw water, which we use mostly for irrigation, and then our potable water that we use for domestic purposes. Tonight, John Ensminger was actually originally supposed to be here, but he's up testifying on the drought contingency plan in Washington, D.C., so he'll be out next month to give everyone updates with regards to that. So I'll try not to steal his thunder. They also provide us with water quality testing. I think everybody knows they manage Southern Nevada's water resources as a whole. They also kind of oversee the conservation planning as well as the drought contingency plan. And then they manage and operate the big backbone regional system to deliver water to the purveyor members. This is a picture of Lake Mead. You can see there, it's about 149 feet down from full pool, if that's what that's what they call it. So we're still in a drought, even though it's been a better year than normal. John will talk a lot about that next month, but the good news is it looks like with the snowpack this year, we'll be able to at least push shortage off one more year. Shortage starts to happen where Southern Nevada has to give up some resources to leave water in the lake at 1075 elevation, then at 1050 elevation, then 1025 elevation. This slide itself just kind of shows you that, over the past few years, our demands have stayed pretty stable. So it tells me that conservation is working. You know, we have added population, we've added accounts, but we haven't used more water. So I think you'll also see in the very near future that conservation is going to be something the Southern Nevada Water Authority focuses on more stringently than they even have in the past. And so we'll be coming forth with more drought measures in the future. This slide gives you an idea of the assets within the system. We have over 780,000 feet of potable water mains from 2 inches, pretty small, to 24 inches diameter. A lot of pressure reducing valves. We have a lot of terrain in Boulder City. A lot of fire hydrants to keep the dogs happy. 2,942 valves and 6,000 water meters, plus or minus. And of course, Councilman Levitt likes pictures, so there's some pictures. Some more of the assets on the reservoir side. We do have right now about 12 million gallons actually in service. We have a 2.5 million gallon tank that's out of service. Something we have to take a look at. There's been some water quality issues associated with that tank itself. And the reason I kind of want to show this next slide is that this slide here shows our max day demand during the summer. We pump around 16 million gallons a day. The Southern Nevada Water Authority system itself can pump around 20 million gallons a day. So we do have capacity to add customers. But the concern I have is tied back to storage and the fact that if we lose the Southern Nevada water system, which is a single pipeline coming up from Alfred Merritt Smith treatment plant, we're down for a number of days. Do we have enough storage to be able to deal with that? So that's something we'll be looking at pretty quickly. On the raw water side, we have 6 raw water accounts. Quite a bit of more water main than I thought. We have about 82,000 feet of 2-inch to 24-inch raw water pipeline, some pressure reducing valves, and of course 1 reservoir for raw water storage. This slide here shows you that we do have available capacity to move more raw water, which kind of leads back to looking into whether we would have the ability to convert the Boulder municipal course into a raw water course and not continue to use potable water for that course. And in fact, we're starting those meetings tomorrow morning. So, went too far. As it relates to water system planning and asset management planning, we do have a hydraulic model that was completed in 2017, which means we have employed or deployed some of that technology to be able to deal with operational issues. If there's new customers, large or small, we can input that into the model and see how it affects the operation of the system, as well as the capacity of the system. A water system master plan is needed to assess future needs. We talked about that in the budget discussions. And then from a maintenance management perspective, they have, at least the folks I'm working with, have started a preventative maintenance plan. It does need to be formalized and kind of built into the operations in a more formal way. When I say that, we have input most of the assets into the GIS system, so we know the pipe material, age of the pipe, diameter of the pipe, and we can start really building that information and using it to do the condition assessments. The system, like me, is aging, and so obviously this kind of all comports back to the strategic plan and the fact that we do need to manage our assets. Improving that planning and maintenance and asset management will improve our ability to actually have a very accurate capital improvement plan, and that's important as we do get into the rate study that we've talked about. Now for the fun stuff, the wastewater. Everybody likes wastewater. The 1972, the Clean Water Act was enacted, which basically created a permitting system to basically give us direction on how we have to what levels we have to treat wastewater. In Boulder City, we treat to a secondary level, and then we discharge that, the majority of that effluent into the desert south of I-11. The number of counts is similar to water. Just here's a kind of a summary of the assets. Again, quite a bit of sewer lines, 4-inch to 18-inch, over 436,000 feet. 3 sewer lift stations, 14,752 feet of sewer force mains that go with those lift stations, and 1,800 manholes. Had to have some more pictures for Councilman Levin. These pictures really are a good example of what happens when you have corrosion in your manholes. The picture on the right, it shows a pretty severely corroded manhole. Picture on the left shows some issues with one of our pipelines. On the treatment side, whoops, went too far. On the treatment side, we have the 2 MGD secondary wastewater treatment facility. Right now, we treat about 1.2 million gallons a day at that facility. We have one customer who uses some of the effluent, but the majority of it is discharged into the desert. And of course, the good news is we have not had any permit violations. More pictures for Councilman Levin. Headworks on the left, there's a capital improvement project to manage some issues with the headworks. It's where the flow goes into the facility and we have to screen stuff out. And then the aerated lagoons on the right. On the wastewater side, unlike the water side, we don't have a hydraulic model. It's not an incredibly complicated wastewater system, but in this day and age, the models are pretty simple to put together and something we should have so that we can assess where we may have hotspots. Or if a large customer comes into town, we can put that demand on the sewer model and determine what the impacts are. We do need a wastewater system master plan. I think I found one from 1969. And if there's one that's more recent than that, I couldn't find it. So maintenance management plan, similar to water. They have started that maintenance management planning, but it does need to be formalized and put into the operating portion of the utility. Again, on the asset management side, it's aging like I am. The majority of the assets are in GIS as well, so that's a good thing. We do need to do comprehensive condition assessments, looking at through television inspection, manhole inspection, to get an idea of what the condition of the sewer is in. We do have some of that information, but the entire system has not been done. And of course, we need to start capturing data. Right now, most of that data is in our operators' heads with regards to sanitary sewer overflows and where we have issues in the sewer system. Fortunately, it looks like most of that's limited. Probably one of the bigger items that we need to address is what to do with the effluent reuse. We do need to study to figure out what to do that. We did start meeting with Southern Nevada Water Authority just recently. Right now, that's a valuable resource. I think we all would agree with that. We discharge it and dispose of it into the desert, and that doesn't get used, doesn't count to a return flow credit, so it has really no value right now. So the options we're intending on looking at are treating it, returning it to Lake Mead or the river, either one, and then possibly either indirect potable reuse or direct potable reuse. So with that, we do need to improve the planning, the maintenance, and asset management. And again, we really would need to get that solidified so that we have a good handle on our capital projects and the priorities for those capital projects. On the electrical side, the electric utility, we purchase most of our power through Silver State Electric Association. That includes the Hoover Power, the Hoover Schedule A and B, the Salt Lake portion, and then where we don't have enough power to meet those demands through Hoover, they go out on the market and purchase power for us. The good news is those market purchases and the combination of those with the Hoover Power, at least for the next 5 years, look really good. So typically, we're fairly accurate from 0 to 5 years with what our power purchases are going to be. After that, it gets a little more sketchy, so we're a little bit more conservative with those projections. And you can see here on this, whoop, was already there. On this slide, it just gives you an idea in megawatt hours. We average, this year about $35 per megawatt hour. It's going to stay around that for the next 4 to 5 years. So that's a positive thing. Assets, we have a lot of electrical assets, over 100,000 linear feet of overhead transmission cable, almost 157,000 linear feet of overhead distribution cable, and almost 600,000 linear feet of underground distribution cable. We also have the substations that you've heard plenty about, a lot of distribution transformers. We have about 8,000 electrical connections, plenty of 243 steel power poles, and 1,210 wooden power poles. More pictures. You like pictures. On the electrical side, again, unlike water on the wastewater side, the electrical side, we don't have a model as far as a technical ability to put a new demand on a model and see the impacts on the electrical distribution system immediately. We do those by calculation now. I don't, but somebody does. And again, we're far along with technology that we should be able to implement a distribution system model. We do need a master plan, more so now for the distribution system. I think we have a pretty good handle on the improvements that need to be done with the transmission side. They've been ongoing. They'll continue to be going on into the near future. And so now we need to dive down into the distribution side of the utility and get a good handle on that. Yeah, and on the maintenance management side, we're mostly reactive. We do run some things to failure. There's little or no predictive maintenance management, so that's something we definitely need to get in place once we complete a condition assessment. Again, this is kind of over and over, but the system is aging. I think everybody here knows that. It was constructed quite a long time ago. In this case, we do not have all the assets in GIS. We are backlogged with regards to that, and there's a lot of work to go to get the mapping done to get that into the system. So same story here. We definitely need to improve planning, maintenance, and asset management. And that will definitely help with for us to be able to have confidence in those CIP projects that need to be built in for the next 5 to 10 years into our budget process. A landfill. We're a Class 1 municipal landfill, regulated by the Sun Nevada Health District. Obviously, we cover a large amount of square miles in Boulder City. Operations are contracted to BC Waste Free. Obviously, the city owns the landfill, and it does have a projected life of 100 years. So the good news is we're in pretty good shape with the landfill itself. There might be some small capital projects that need to be done with regards to some drainage improvements and some fencing and stuff like that, but there's nothing really alarming with regards to the landfill or the operations of the landfill, at least that I can see yet. So in conclusion, that's kind of a summary of where I think we are with the utilities and the utility funds themselves. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
I think that was less than 90 minutes.
It's close. Did a great job. All right, council questions or comments? Mr. McManus.
I know we talked about some of these things yesterday in my briefing, so I appreciate you mentioning a few of those. One thing that I hear from a lot of folks in town is we've seen substantial rate increases over the past few years. Prior to your arrival, I'll point that out to the public. You're not responsible for that. But again, these have been substantial. One of the things that has been factored into that are the service fees. So we've gone from, I believe it was $5 for a service fee on electric meters to almost $40 on the meter. The problem with that for a lot of folks is you can't conserve your way out of fees like that. One thing you didn't mention was there is a rate study being contemplated. So I'll give you an opportunity to mention that.
You are correct. That's near and dear to my heart for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, I think we need to obviously take a look at the capital plan, the O&M budgets, look at how we're currently managing the rates and the rate structure, and we will do that through a rate study. July 1st, hopefully get started on that.
Okay. But again, as I mentioned with these service fees, if a person's on a fixed income, when those fees go up by 600%, they can't turn the thermostat up a few degrees and try and mitigate that. So that's a significant burden. And I do understand that those service fees are what pay for a lot of the maintenance and replacements that are needed. But I would really like to see us look at something where those folks that want to conserve, that are able to conserve, can do that and make a difference on their bill, so that no matter what they do, they still get the service fees that, as I say, we've seen substantial increases in those amounts. So that's one item with regard to the rate structure, and it doesn't promote conservation. And again, I get that it's our municipal utility, and if people conserve too much, then that puts us in a bind on some other things. But if people want to conserve and need to conserve, I would like to see us have an ability to be able to give them a way to do that. You also mentioned the approaching SNWA about further treating the wastewater that's currently going out into the desert. I think that's an excellent idea. 1 million gallons a day is the figure that flows out there. We look over the hill the other direction and we see Lake Mead dropping. That may not be much of a drop in Lake Mead, but it's substantial if we look at 356,000 gallons or million gallons a year. With regard to these projects and the state of our utilities, I know there are some restrictions on, we don't want to put every piece of information out there to protect the system. But I think it would be good when you do get these things worked out and get these management plans in place that you've mentioned, we inform the public about that, what the state of these things are. I know some of this has been done through the capital improvement plan, but we need to do a better job, I believe, of explaining to the public what exactly it is that we're working on. An example of that came up with the BC tap transformer. Apparently it was purchased last year. It's yet to be energized. There were issues found with it. That was a major project. Matter of fact, it was #1, I believe, on the capital improvement project. And then it comes to light that it still hasn't even been energized. It's just sitting out there on the pad waiting for something to happen. We need to advise the public as these things go through. So I would like to see something get posted on our city website that shows the progress of these different projects. With regard to the landfill, I've heard some complaints, I'm sure it was a safety move, but they put a railing around all the dumpsters out there. I granted it's a way to get people in shape, but there needs to be some way of making it somewhat possible for people to get their stuff into the dumpsters and not have it spill out on the ground and that sort of thing. Again, I understand that was a safety concern, that we don't want people falling in the dumpster as they're throwing things away, but something maybe could be engineered out there to make that a little easier on folks instead of having to lift things up over the railing. With regard to our water system, that was an issue that we spoke about yesterday. Knowing what these reservoirs are for, we are paying off a substantial debt out of our water fund. $2.3 million a year is going for that raw water project. A lot of statements made that that project was in anticipation of adding to the number of golf courses we already have here in Boulder City. So we're paying for development that never occurred and has no benefit to the city. If that is to be converted or needs to be converted for storage of potable water in the event that something happens, again, I would like to see some very firm information get presented to the public about that. And again, I do appreciate the plans that you're putting in place. I know you've been here less than 3 months now, so this system was built, some 90 years ago, or at least started being built 90 years ago. But we have a long ways to go. There have been a lot of mistakes made in our utility fund that we continue to pay for. So I appreciate the work you're doing on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Councilwoman Levitt.
Well, besides pictures, I really like planning as well. So you did a good job of both. And I do think pictures tell what did they say? I can't remember the saying, but anyway, it tells people or shows people what's going on. So I appreciate that. But I think it's also important when we're talking about transparency that we do have these plans that people can see exactly what we're planning for the future and that they're measurable and we're accountable. And so I think that adds to what Councilman McManus was saying with respect to keeping the public informed, because they can see what is planned and what we accomplish. And I also appreciate you bringing up the affluent water that's going into the desert. That was, I think you and I talked about it, that it was mentioned to John Ensminger at the town hall meeting that we had last fall. So that has been on his radar for a while. And I know that they want to come up with something that is useful for that water. But, one of the problems, of course, is the cost of doing any of the alternatives that you mentioned. So anyway, I think this was a great overview, and I appreciate your service to our city as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Mr. Harhay, do you have anything?
I have nothing to add.
All right. Well, let me add just a few words. Great presentation. It's good for us to see periodically, the status of everything, what you're working on to, I think the common thread through each of these was, we need to update master plans. We need to get a systems model in place and, other things like that so that, we're prepared for contingencies in the future and we kind of know the roadmap going forward and we can quickly assess new demands and things like that. And I agree with all of that. So appreciate you putting a fresh set of eyes on all of those and getting the ball rolling in that direction. Just a couple of things on each of these utilities. The water, that particular utility, we do have the one remaining debt that we have, and I've talked about this in past meetings in connection with the budget and other presentations, and just again encourage us to look for ways to pay down that debt quickly. It's something that we've all inherited. None of us created that, and yet it's important that we not just allow the debt to remain there. We need to, in my opinion, aggressively pay it off to the extent we can do that, so that we can save the city money and in the long run, as well as to prepare for the potential for having additional debt, whatever that might be, whether it's a swimming pool or something else in the future. You don't want to just stack up debts and not pay those down. And so we've done that in the past, and I would just remind us to keep looking for ways to do that going forward. On the wastewater, I'm glad Councilwoman Levitt brought up that her town hall meeting. And I do wish John Ensminger were here tonight because he gave a great presentation at that town hall meeting that Councilwoman Levitt organized. And after that meeting, Mr. Lassoff was there too. He and I approached Mr. Ensminger about just that specific thing, which was, isn't there a way that the Water District or the Southern Nevada Water Authority can help us to do something with our wastewater that just goes out into the desert? Because part of his presentation is how this, the Water Authority is preparing for the future, conservation-minded. It's recharging water into the ground and other things. And so we talked about that. We talked about potential of putting a bannock in the lake. And we, coming out of that conversation, kind of discussion about going forward with staff on just exploring those. And I know immediately Rory, when he was here, reached out and others to make that happen. And so I'm glad that discussion and dialogue is going forward. We would like to hear, what some of the proposals are, or if there's anything feasible in the future. And we can, I guess, get some of those in our briefings. But I think that's excellent that we're looking at that. And I just want to say too that on the landfill, again, I mean, that's one that I think we can be proud of. We've got 2 landfill expansions in my tenure on the city council. It is looking good for the future. We have extended the landfill life from 10 or less years, 10 or fewer years when I first got on council. I mean, that was a real concern as to would we be able to continue this thing. And so with the help of our operator, with the help of the health district when I was on there, with forward thinking by the council, we've been able to extend that out to at least 100 years or more. And so that's one that we can be proud of, in good shape for at least for the foreseeable future on to where that's going. And we need to continue to do that with our other utilities as well. So good presentation. And I'm sure that it will be good fodder for the public to have questions about that, and appreciate you being there to answer those. So with that, I will open up to public comment if there be any. Judy.
Judy DeShane. Wouldn't dumping the water out in the desert recharge the aquifer in any way, or could we extend it so it would go into an aquifer underground some way? I don't know enough about Nevada's water system underground. It's just an idea.
Thank you. Any others? All right, we'll close public comment on that. So yeah, I mean, there is a difference between evaporation and actually recharging the ground, but I'm not the technical guy on that, so I'll let somebody else answer that question for you. All right, so thank you for that presentation. We don't have any action items on that, right? Okay, we're on to item number 5. Request for City Council directive authorizing city staff to seek appraisals for 384 acres in the El Dorado substation. Mr. Armentrout.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Brock Armentrout, your contracts real estate manager. I promised the city clerk that I'd use as many words as possible for my item. If you know Ms. Crum, she prefers I use as few as possible. The El Dorado substation, located at the far west end of El Dorado Valley Drive, which is west of the initial solar energy area. That site was initially approved under the BLM right-of-way grant back in 1969 for a 50-year grant. The city was required to recognize all existing BLM right-of-way grants at the time we acquired ownership in 1995, until such time that they expire. This one's about to expire in August of this year, and they've approached the city to convert their right-of-way grant to a lease with the city. To do that, I need to have the land appraised. And under our city charter and under state law, I need to ask your permission first before I seek the appraisal. So we're here before you today to seek staff direction to go ahead and have this land appraised so we can move forward with the lease.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, council? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion then.
I'll move to authorize going ahead with the appraisal on the property.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next, we have item number 7 already, the city manager's report.
Mayor and council, this item has no other, what am I trying to say? No things out of the normal transactions that we see on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you. So, next is item number 8, matters pertaining to the Boulder City Professional Firefighters Association, fact-finding and negotiations. We have Mr. Bryce Bolt to introduce that. And we just have A through D, I guess, right? We struck E and F.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryce Bolt, your administrative officer. And tonight, there's a statute that we need to have a little public dialogue about a fact-finding. So to give you a little background, about 3 years ago, we began negotiations with the Boulder City Professional Firefighters Association. At some point in time, I believe it was December, we declared an impasse and entered non-binding fact-finding in December of 2019. That fact-finding has been returned, and by statute, we need to bring it to the governing body within 45 days, discuss the elements of it, and present the fiscal impact of that fact-finding recommendation. And then we'll meet the terms of that. I was hoping to bring the whole kit and caboodle tonight, being the collective bargaining agreement, total fiscal impact, but we needed to, the statute governing that process requires the CBA be strikeouts, underlines, and we're still working on that. There was a little language question. We think we've got that cleared up. And then moreover, the retroactive pay and benefits, want to make sure we're really pretty close on that before we present it. So that'll hopefully come to April 9th. The fact finder in this case, by the time that day ended, really was only one issue before that fact finder, and that was retroactive pay for fiscal year 17-18, and whether the city would have to pay that retroactive pay or not. That was the question before the fact finder. She came back with kind of splitting the baby, if you will, a little 3/4 to 1/4. So her recommendation is that we back pay from October 1st, 2018 until, October 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018. The fiscal impact of that is approximately $36,605. Now, when I come back with the whole collective bargaining agreement, that will be a part of that fiscal impact. So tonight really is the opportunity to discuss the findings and in an open forum, and I think we'll meet the obligations of that statute.
Okay, so we also have a closed session on here. So how do you explain to me what we're doing? Because I know the public hearing part is moved to the next meeting, it appears, correct?
Well, when a contract comes back, there's a public hearing involved too. This is a public, and let me see if I can find the actual language. We have to hold a public meeting, which this is a public meeting, and we have to discuss the issues the parties submitted to the fact finder, and that was the one issue, the retroactive pay. report the findings and recommendations of the fact finder, and that was the October 1st, 17 through June 30th, 18 was with the fact finder. The overall fiscal impact, I presented that at $36,600, I believe. And then I just have to report that, and that's about it for tonight.
Okay.
Again, I was hoping to bring it all, but we'll take care of it April 9th.
Okay, so are we entertaining questions on what you've reported then at this point? Or?
You certainly can. I can answer questions about the fact finding, absolutely.
Okay, any questions or comments, council? Okay, and so we do have a closed session to discuss the labor negotiations. And as far as final public comment, can we move that ahead, or do we need to go ahead and go into the closed session first?
You can move public comment up because there will not be any action taken coming out of closed session. It's more of a briefing. There's no action item after the closed session. So you can go ahead and move public comment up.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that and do our council reports after that, and then we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. So we are to our final public comment period if anybody's wishing to speak and give public comment on anything. Okay, we'll close public comment and come to council for reports. Mr. McManus.
It was mentioned earlier this evening about the start of the census, the 2020 census. I attended the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition board meeting today. That's a subject that was discussed. Apparently, some cities are going ahead. It's very important to make sure that we get accurate counts. These counts feed into all types of formulas that determine how much money comes back to each community. That includes getting accurate counts of the homeless, potentially undocumented individuals. All of that needs to be calculated in order to have accurate counts as far as how our schools get funded, the money that comes back to each city. So I believe there was a dollar amount out there of maybe a $200,000 contract that might be upcoming for something like that. I'm sure that Mr. Mays with Community Development will be getting something prepared for council in the future on that. I believe it was the city of Las Vegas has already started their process to try and get that organized. But again, it's oh, and they did come up with a clever acronym also. SNAPPY was the acronym they've got going for theirs. A couple of other things that came up at that meeting. This regional coalition has been instrumental in some of the trail systems that benefit Boulder City to a large extent. The River Mountain Loop Trail is one of those. There's a Neon to Nature organization. They tell me they have a phone app for that. I don't like apps on my phone, but that might be a good one if you're interested. Give you all kinds of information about the trail systems. And then Outdoor Nevada is partnering up with our local Chamber of Commerce for the Spring Jamboree. That's helping both entities. I was told that the Bass Outdoor Sporting Goods Store will become one of the sponsors for this event. So we are hosting the Outdoor Nevada event in conjunction with the Spring Jamboree this year.
Thank you. Ms. Levitt.
Mr. Mayor, I have just a couple of things. I wanted to mention that a week ago, yesterday on Monday, we had the ribbon cutting for the Boulder City Express, which is a great deal for Boulder City. I see Jill here. That was a huge accomplishment of the Chamber of Commerce and just a Herculean task of getting that organized. And so it means that buses are coming out to Boulder City every day bringing tourists from the Strip. And I was at the hotel last Friday and had to wait 45 minutes for a table, and I was hoping it was because of the Boulder City Express. So another thing I like about it, besides it bringing tourists to our town, is what is called the wrap that will be around the bus, which is, I guess, airbrush paintings or whatever, but will display all the attractions of Boulder City, from our adventure tourism to the unique history of Boulder City. So I like the idea of that's a billboard on the strip, going up and down the strip, telling everybody about Boulder City. So congratulations on that. That's just wonderful for Boulder City. And also the senior center hosted their rock roll stroll, which I think you mentioned, which was very successful and very well attended. I think the most people that they've ever had, and that was a great event as well. So.
Thank you. Mr. Harhe, do you have anything?
Yes, I have somewhat of a truncated report. Unfortunately, I can't see the streaming video here. I don't know what the problem is. I got the site up, but the telephone connection is not very good. But today we spent the day meeting with our entire Nevada delegation, the two senators' offices, and our Congress people. It was a very informative and interesting exchange. I presented some ideas regarding Boulder City and workforce connections, so we have a full report on that once I get back. I might say we're very thankful to former Congressman John Porter, who accompanied us and was able to direct us through the maze of tunnels and other transportation below the city of Washington to get between these various house buildings. So it was a very exciting and interesting day, and a full report will follow.
Thank you. Appreciate you doing that. I too wanted to chime in on the Boulder City Express. I was at the ribbon cutting, and I think it's a phenomenal accomplishment for the Chamber of Commerce. I know that the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority is behind that as well, and right now it's kind of a one-way. It brings visitors to Boulder City, which is good, but also had two stops at each end of town, one out by Chili Jilly's and one in the Old Town area. Also, I think 3 or 4 stops down by Lake Mead and Hoover Dam area. And it's not just tour buses that are passing through while they go to the dam or while they go to the Grand Canyon or wherever, or even to the airport. It's actually bringing visitors here to our destination. I know that the Boulder City Express has bigger plans for that if it's successful, and hopefully it will be. And I think, it's incumbent upon us as citizens of Boulder City to try to help that to be successful, to get the word out, to not only promote it from our end, but I know they want to make it so that it's it could at some point serve as an intra-city, within Boulder City, shuttle service of sorts by being a circulator, as well as eventually even take, go 2 ways where it could take visitors back and forth and go in both directions. That's going to require a lot, but I think it is an affordable service. I think it's going to be very attractive to the Las Vegas visitors who want a different experience to come out to just visit Boulder City for what we have to offer here. And I think it's a great idea, and I really appreciate the Chamber of Commerce getting behind that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, of course, that we just finished up early voting. I think we had 1,400 early voters here in City Hall. This year it's a little bit different, where people can early vote at any voting center throughout the valley. So you can still early vote, I believe, at some locations in Las Vegas, like malls and other places like that. But of course, a week from today is the primary election, and so 1,400 is a little bit less than what we had in 2017. And again, you can't exactly compare apples to apples because we don't know how many have voted at the malls and whatnot as in the Boulder City election. But encourage you all, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, because all the the council members here, including Mr. Harhe, are candidates, and we've got a lot of you out in the audience that have probably already early voted. But encourage people to do their constitutional duty and to exercise that privilege to get out and vote. It's a great thing that in Boulder City that we do have an active electorate, and want just to let everybody know that it is important that you get out and do that. So thank you. With that, we won't adjourn the meeting at this point. We'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. You can stick around if you want to. I can maybe do something really exciting like bang the gavel to adjourn at the end if you want to see that. But otherwise, it's for all intents and purposes adjourned for the public meeting. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll move to go into closed session.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. So we will go into closed session. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
It's cold there.
It's cold there?
Yeah, it's cold. It was raining and hailing when we arrived, but it's starting up. It's just cold. In the 40s.
Wow. All right, so we are coming out of closed session and back into open session, and meeting adjourned.
It's the first time I've ever seen you do that.
That's pretty good. Mayor Tobler used to do it every time.